Hi kids, Michael Bane here for SGO, and instead of coming from the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains, this week I'm coming from Streamlight, where I just dropped in on these poor people. We happen to be in the Philadelphia area. I happened to run into many people that I know from Streamlight who said, how can you be here and not come over to the factory? I said, you're right, so why not? We talk about lights all the time. We talk about lights as a necessity, and for the most part, you all agree. The ones of you who don't agree, you really need to start thinking about it. But one thing I wanted to touch on here at Streamlight is over the last 2 years, we've seen the ascendancy of the mini 9mm. The small 9mm pistol has essentially taken over the concealed carry market. And one of the reasons it's done that is because it's small. Think about that. So when I say to you, I need you to carry a light every day, and you tell me I just downsized from a Glock Model 19 to a SIG 365 because it's about 1/3 less the size, you probably need to do the same thing with lights. And that's something that Streamlight has sort of pioneered. This little guy here, I have to look at it because they all have these like different names, but running off 1 AA, it's this size. Typically, this is my light. This is my Streamlight, the PolyTac X that I carry all the time. But when you downsize the gun, I think it makes a lot of sense to downsize the light because none of us have Batman belts. We don't have utility belts to carry all the things we tell you to carry. So I like the idea of a light that's small. And this one, I believe a 1L, it's a 1 AA battery. It's a bright light. It's something that you're not going to be even aware that you're carrying until you need it. So if you've downsized your gun, you might consider downsizing your light. One thing I do want to show you here that's new, that's not quite available yet, but it's going to be, you're familiar with TLR series of the weapons mounted lights. What you're usually familiar with is the classic rocker switch that's on the back of the light. And yes, it works. You actually push it down, push it up, but it turns out that not everybody's hand is the same size. I know it's a shock to you, but especially for law enforcement agencies where they are obligated to make sure that the gear works for everybody. And sometimes this particular rocker mounted light is a little bit hard to operate if you've got great big hands, small hands. And so Streamlight decided to address that with the TLR-7 A, and they have a high and a low switch. And I think this is the high switch. If you can see here, I don't want to operate it with my finger because that's what they do in Europe. And trust me on this, your trigger finger has exactly one thing to do in its entire life, and that's pull the trigger, not trigger the light. Because if you trigger the light with your trigger finger, which you can do, sooner or later you're going to get a sympathetic muscle contraction. And not only did you turn on your light, but you're going to shoot a hole in your ceiling. And you don't want to do that. Your thumb activates the light. That's what it's for. So on a forward thumb grip, if you've got big thumbs, big fat thumbs, you've got this high light here. So obviously these are dummy guns, rings. So you've got the high light. It's easy to trigger. It's easy if you have a larger thumb. You also have now the option of a low switch. And for me, it's just about perfect because the switch is sitting right here. When I lay my hands in the right grip, I'm on the gun here, you'll notice that my thumb falls right there on the switch. So I'm able to turn it on, turn it off, momentary, lock it on, lock it on. That's a smart move for me. I mean, to me, this fits better than anything else. The other thing I like is that with the rocker switches, which we've all operated on the rocker switches for the last, I don't know, 20 years. So it's not like, oh my God, we can't figure out how this works. But it's a secondary motion, if you think about it, is that you're here in position and your thumb pushes down. When your thumb pushes down, it moves it a little bit out of the position that you need with the gun. You have a very specific position of how your weak hand sits alongside the gun here. And so when you're pushing down, it takes you out of your grip. This week's episode of SGO is brought to you by Lipsy's, Franklin Armory, Honor Defense, Lucid Optics, Tandem Cross, and Cimarron Firearms. Almost everybody is using a forward thumb type grip at this point. This was developed out of competition, but at the same time, it's the most efficient way to run a gun. Doesn't matter whether it's a semi-auto, a revolver, anything. It's an efficient way because everything lines up, right? What we know is we want all our bones in line. We want our wrist in a straight line here all the way out to the thumb. Magic thumb points at the target. With this low switch, what I'm able to do is when I build my grip, I'm here, I come in to build my grip, my weak hand rolls here, my thumbs are here, and look, my thumb is now right on the switch. And I don't have to really move the thumb very much at all to trigger it. We're able to trigger it very quickly, very easily, which is definitely, I feel like an improvement off a rocker. Because once again, anytime you move your thumb out of position, it means that for you to really shoot well, you're going to have to get your thumb back in position on that. So I think it's a really smart move from Streamlight to build a set of lights that a department, especially a law enforcement department, where you've got little bitty people all the way up to great big people, to say, okay guys, here, which one of these works for you? It's the same light, it's just a different switch system. So I think that's a very important addition. And you should know that as well. How big is your hand? How does it fit on your gun? What do you want to do with the gun and the light? Make sure everything works as a unit. The other thing I think that's kind of cool in the world is the great lumen race. Lights are bright. The first light I got, God, 20 years ago, I think it was 50 lumen. And I thought it was a miracle because I was used to those like aluminum flashlights. They had incandescent bulb, and basically it had roughly the same candle power as a candle. So you could light a little bit, but it wouldn't light your path. This guy here, 1,000 lumens off this guy. It is a very, very bright light. What's the utility of a bright light? If you're using it within a context of with the gun, the bright light buys you stuff. It buys you, number one, the ability to stop an aggressor before the aggressor becomes an aggressor, if that makes sense. We talk a lot about managing unknown contacts. That is, you're in the supermarket parking lot and somebody who's not your friend targets you and is coming towards you. One of the things that we've taught for years in the best defense is the safest thing for you to do in that situation is not let a person close. You don't want somebody to close within arm's length of you. If it's a dusk situation, if it's a night situation when typically these unknown encounters happen, a light buys you something. It buys you the ability to have somebody stop. Nobody wants a bright light in their face. I've used it like that. I've used it at the point where I was armed. I had a concealed weapon. I don't like a person coming at me who's targeted me really specifically because I would define that as an aggressor. But one of the things I found with a light in a weak hand pocket, it comes up, it goes like this, and I say, can I help you? And what they always say is, turn the light off. And what I always say is, no, I need you to stop there. Whole series of standard techniques that we've taught. A lot of great people teach better. Craig Douglas is the master of the form. But a light buys you that ability to basically have a person stop, access your gun, and you'll notice when someone is shining 1,000 lumens of flashlight in your face, they can't see your hands. They don't know what there is going on behind the light. And that actually allows you to access a concealed carry gun surreptitiously, because the gun doesn't come out until you need the gun to come out. But one of the ways that we've talked about on Best Defense, this is a trick from Michael Seeklander, is if you want to double the speed of your draw, put your hand on the gun. Achieve a position with the gun where nobody can see it. That way it takes you half the amount of time to bring that gun into play. And a light buys you those seconds. And I have found it does actually work. When you got a light in somebody's face and they say, turn off that light, and you go, no, they now understand what the situation is. They understand that you are not going to acquiesce, they are not going to close. And the great thing about that is you haven't presented a gun. When you draw that gun, you know, you've got to talk to the police department. Because the first person who calls the police, that's the good guy. So you always want to be the good guy. Every time I have pulled a gun, the first thing I do when the situation is ended is I call the police department and say, hi, I pulled a gun. And you should do that as well. It should be like factored in. So with Streamlight, you can kind of pick and choose. You can go 1,000 lumens if you need it, 500 lumens with a really easy to carry light, or the little guy, the 1L, 1AA that we're talking about, could easily, at 350 lumens, will accomplish exactly the same thing. So I like lights. I like anything that buys me time. I like anything that hides what I'm doing, because in a situation you want every advantage. I don't want a potential aggressor to know what I'm doing. I don't want to be like, whoa, I got a gun. I don't want to do that. That's not good. Because sometimes when you do that, what you've done is inadvertently issue a challenge to the aggressor. So you're like, okay, I got a gun. Well, I got a gun too. And then, you're the OK corral, and that's not a good place to be. It worked out well for the ERPs, but it might well not work out well for you. So anything that buys time, anything that gives you an opportunity to hide your motions from a potential aggressor, from an unknown contact, is a good thing. One of the things that I've admired with Streamlight over the years is, I was talking last week, we were down at Bill Wilson's place, we were talking a lot about the early days of practical shooting, and Bill Rogers, who pioneered the classic Rogers technique of using a light, said, remember how much we paid for lights 20 years ago? A flashlight cost almost as much as a gun, so you had a choice. You could have a concealed carry weapon, you could have a concealed carry flashlight. Streamlight has pioneered affordable lights that are really, really good. And so from my standpoint, if you've got an affordable light, you've got a choice that fits with how you carry the gun. So you can adjust the light. You want big, you want little. This guy, that's my carry, this is the road light. It's a PolyTac X. It's polymer, it's light. This thing has been around the world with me, quite literally around the world. It still works fine. I can carry it day in, day out. I carry it on airplanes because one of the great things is you can carry a light on an airplane. I once had a flight attendant say, why would you want a flashlight? I said, what happens when you have a problem? And she goes, the lights go out. I'm like, surprise, I have a light. And she goes, I'm going to stick with you. You've got the light. But you can choose the light you need. It's not going to bankrupt you. You can fit it to your own style of how you carry the light, where you carry the light. But the important thing is having the light. So it's been fun to just kind of drop in at Streamlight. I now have to go apologize to everybody whose day I wrecked. But I'm glad to see these new lights. This is something I'm going to be going to because I like the low switch. If you've got bigger hands, you've got big fat thumbs, a lot of people do, then you can go to the high switch. And you can, once again, the light needs to adjust to your style of shooting, to your style of the way you're going to use it, because that's the most important thing. So anyhow, that is a crash course in lights from here at Streamlight. And hey, they're good people, good lights. They work with them. Streamlight to me is the best buy in the industry. Yes, they're sponsors. You know what? But I don't have sponsors who have products that I don't like. So once again, Michael Bane, SGO. I will see you next Wednesday morning, as every Wednesday morning, and maybe we'll make something go bang then.